Morning guys, so I'm up a little bit earlier than usual because today is the release day for Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, and the launch event is actually happening at my local Barnes & Noble, so I need to get there early to get in line to get a wristband so that I can get into the event this evening. I'm planning on vlogging and sharing with you guys what she has to say, what happens at the event. And also, I used my Audible credit this month to get Queen of Air and Darkness, and I just started listening to it, so I will be doing a reading vlog as well. I will say, I've listened to the first chapter so far, and it picks up right where Lord of Shadows leaves off. So let's say this will be spoiler-free until after the footage of the event, and then as I continue listening to the book, there will probably be spoilers, but for those of you who have read Lord of Shadows, Queen of Air and Darkness does pick up literally in the same moment where it ends, and it's a little intense. So I'm gonna go get ready for the day, and then we're gonna go get wristbands, and fingers crossed the line won't be too insane. I'm really looking forward to this. All right, so it is about 8:20, and I am on my way to Barnes & Noble to go get in line. I've got my almost 2-year-old with me this morning, and I'm loving this. It's like a Harry Potter headband from Winnie's Whimsy. I love it. It's so fun. Oh shoot. It's definitely one of the longest lines I've seen, guys, and the store isn't even open for a while. And I will get the book at the event tonight. Alright, so I'm just waiting for my husband to come pick up the kids, and then I will be heading in to wait for the event to start. Guys, I felt so dumb. So Cassie Clare will sign one backlist title tonight, and in my rush to get out of the house with the kids, I completely forgot to bring my backlist title. So I had been meaning to pick up a paperback copy of Lord of Shadows anyway, so I got that. All right, Dad picked them up, so I am on my way to the event.
Johnson is the best-selling author of several novels, including Truly Devious, out today in paperback, 13 Little Blue Envelopes, the Sweet Scarlet series, and the Shades of London series. She has also written collaborative works such as Let It Snow with John Green and Lauren Miracle, and The Bane Chronicles with Cassandra Clare and Sarah Reese Brennan. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming tonight's MC, Maureen Johnson.
Aren't there? Hi, I'm Maureen.
Hi.
I'm your stage friend tonight to introduce a good friend of mine who wrote a book that you may have heard of, actually a couple books that you may have heard of. I'd like to just do a quick survey of the room, if I may. This is a binary choice. Are you ready? Choose one, only one. I'm not joking. Are you ready? Who's Team Jace? Now the right choice. Who's Team Simon? This is the right kind of crowd. You love her. She's here tonight. She's written some stuff, including a character named Jace and a more important character named Simon. She's my friend. She's your favorite. It's Cassie Clare. Your hair looks incredible. the deputy editor of Teen Vogue.
I'm not like texting or something. I'm gonna take a picture of you guys. Okay, everybody go Team Shadow Hunters. Team Shadow Hunters! Alright, thank you.
See, I like that one because it's a little less like swaying the audience either way.
Oh, Maureen was totally cheating there, influencing people to vote for Simon.
She should!
Chairman Meow was obviously the most significant.
Well, Cassie, thank you so much for having me today. And
Thank you for coming.
Congratulations on the book finally being out. How are you feeling? What's publish day like for you?
Oh God, publishing day is like a very anxious day. We always assume something's gonna go horribly wrong, like all the books will be shipped with like bugs in them, and that actually happened to me once. Or you know, something else terrible will happen, and you worry, you know, that everyone will hate it, or the books won't arrive and there won't be any books for people to buy. So you spend like the day, at least you spend like the day before release day freaking out, and then the actual like release day, like a sort of weird calm descends on you because you're like, there's nothing I can do now. Whatever is gonna happen is gonna happen. But like, I actually really like going on tour when I have a book coming out because then I get to spend time with people who love the books, and it's a great way to de-stress.
Do you have any like publish day rituals or anything?
I get up and I tell my husband that we are moving to another country because everyone's gonna hate the book and I'll never be able to show my face again, and I start looking at real estate prices in Iceland. And then like around nooner I calm down and I'm like, whatever, let's go get lunch.
So I'm gonna show my bias a little bit with my first question about the series because I'm from Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I also know that the Dark Artifices books are, in so many words, a love letter to that city. How exactly did my hometown inspire you?
I also grew up in LA, so it's my hometown too. And we moved there when I was like 3 years old. And so for me, it's kind of a love letter to being a teenager in Los Angeles. It reflects a lot of my own experiences. So the kids in the book, the main characters, go to the same places that I went when I was a teenager. They do a lot of the same stuff. They drive around aimlessly a lot.
Which is a huge thing in LA culture.
It's such a thing.
Huge.
Like, yeah, you just drive around aimlessly all night, so they do that.
Yeah,
And
my high school job, it all just went to gas.
Yeah.
That's all you did, was just drive everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And like they drive up and down the PCH. So yeah.
That's what you do a lot.
Yep, you do that a lot. And they go to Cantor's Deli, go to Neptune's Net. They go to a lot of places that are sort of LA institutions that I grew up going to. And so to me, it's kind of it's a love letter to a lot of the things about Los Angeles that, I don't know, are kind of personal to me and are kind of, I think, specific to the people who live there. They, you know, people say LA has no seasons, but it does. For those of us who grew up there, there's the time when the jacaranda trees bloom and the time when they drop all their leaves, and there's the Santa Ana winds, like the hot winds that come in from the desert. And so I wanted to, you know, capture that feeling of being in Los Angeles, of being in a place that's near the ocean, that's near the desert and the hills, and that has this sort of very specific culture.
What do you think is magical about Los Angeles?
It's a kind of a fascinating city. It's a city of massive contrasts, you know, and it's a city where there are really ugly parts of Los Angeles, and there are really beautiful parts of Los Angeles because it has this big, sprawling, urban mess of a city that is sandwiched between gorgeous mountains, this stark, stark, beautiful desert, and this amazing ocean and beach. And so I feel like, you know, LA is a place where, at least when I was a teenager and I was growing up, if I wanted to get away, you know, what I would do is drive to the beach and be alone. And you can, at least you could at that point, drive to the beach, walk out onto the beach, and you would be by yourself, like sitting there looking at the ocean, which I only realized after I left LA how unusual that was. And I think that it's also a place, it is a place of many different cultures coming together, and it's also it's an industry town. It focuses specifically on entertainment and movies. When you are growing up in Los Angeles, you are all the people who stay for the entire credits of the movie because there is a 100% chance you know somebody who worked on it. So if you are in LA and you go see a movie, you will know that everybody stays all the way until the end. And while Shadowhunters really have nothing to do with the movie business, I tried to infuse some stuff about the entertainment industry into the actual books. In the first book, Malcolm the Warlock is hired by some movie producers to make their terrible movie successful. Well, maybe it's magic. It could be.
Absolutely magic.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely magic.
And the kids in it, I would say, are more aware of mundane culture and like movies, TV, music than the kids in the TMI books, because they live in Los Angeles and they're surrounded by all this stuff.
What's the difference, when writing about Los Angeles and writing about New York, like the TMI books?
I mean, I think for me, that I grew up in LA, for me, I'm writing about it as a very specific, like, sort of going back to my teenagerhood experience, whereas I got to know New York as an adult. I moved here in 2001, and so it was a love letter to, like, the New York that I discovered when I was, in my 20s, as opposed to a love letter to the city that I knew when I was 15. And I also think that they are very different cities. New York is much older. I was able to kind of dig into some of the history of New York that was really fun. Whereas with LA, I was really trying to play off what was modern about the city. I mean, the books are really infused by a sense of noir. And I feel like that noir genre, that sort of detective genre, that noirish thing comes straight out of, for me, like Raymond Chandler in Los Angeles.
And in New York, they just wear a lot more black. Like, that's why.
I mean, New York, everybody is just kind of noir.
Yeah.
There's a great cartoon that I saw once where, like, it said, like, the difference between New York and LA. And in one cartoon, it's a guy walking along, and it says LA, and he's saying hello, but he's thinking, screw you. And in New York, he says screw you, but he means thinking hello.
So, to move on to the book itself and all the ideas and the story that you take us on, not to ask where do you get your ideas? But where do you find inspiration for this book specifically? Like, how much of it did you have mapped out before you sat down to write?
I had a good amount of it mapped out before I sat down to write, and for those of you who have been following the book since the beginning, you know that we meet these characters, the Blackthorns and Emma, in City of Heavenly Fire, and even City of Lost Souls. So as early as the second half of the Mortal Instruments series, I was planning this story. And to me, the idea came out of several different, usually, the reason I laugh when people say, like, where do you get your ideas, is you almost never have one idea. You have like 12 ideas and you mash them together, and they make a book. Like Infernal Devices, I was like, well, it's a love triangle, but not a love triangle, and it's in London, but they're also huge clockwork machines. I just like all that stuff. I was like, mash it together. So, and in this case, I wanted to set a book in Los Angeles. I was really sort of fascinated by the idea of the West Coast Shadowhunters and how they would be different and what it would be like, being a Shadowhunter in LA. But also, I was really fascinated by the idea of sort of Julian and Emma's specific situation, which was, how does the war that ends the Mortal Instruments affect the people who are children then? People who lost their parents, people who lost their families in this war. And I've always been sort of fascinated by stories of refugees, people who have had their lives changed by some massive event. And so I thought, well, in this case, Julian has lost both of his parents, Emma has lost both of her parents. How does this change them? What does it mean to be forced into a position, as Julian is, of being an adult when you're only 12 years old, and suddenly you have 5 kids to take care of, and you have a whole institute to run that no one's going to help you with. You have all these secrets to keep. How does this change you as a person? So I was fascinated also by the idea of writing a big family and the family dynamics of that, because I'm an only child, so I don't even know what it'd be like to have 1 brother or sister, let alone like 6 brothers or sisters. So I was sort of like, I think, brought together all of those ideas. So I was like, aftermath of a war, the aftermath of kind of a really dangerous law being passed, which is the Cold Peace, and what does it mean for this family and these kids to have grown up in this situation where they had to become adults much too soon.
Were there any, plot developments that surprised you, like you were like dead set on it's gonna go this way, and then it ends up going a complete different direction?
There were a couple different things. The cohort, our evil-doing friends in Lord of Shadows, they always existed, but they had a smaller role, and then they kind of came out and wound up having a much bigger role, I think influenced by current politics that we are dealing with now. Sometimes you feel like the only way you can deal with things that are happening in the world is to kind of subsume it into your work or your art. And I felt like there was stuff that I wanted to say, and that I could say it through, having the cohort be these bigger villains. And also this is in Queen of Air and Darkness, so I don't want to spoil it for you, but there is a whole middle section of Queen of Air and Darkness that actually was different than what I thought it was going to be. There's a part where all the characters travel to a place we've never been before. It's called Thule. And I can't really say anything much about it, but initially it was a completely different idea, and then I was sitting in my barn with my friend Kelly Link, who is a lovely writer. She has written a couple of the Ghost of the Shadow Market stories with me. She's also a crazy genius. She has like a Pulitzer. She won the MacArthur Genius Award. I don't know why she hangs out with me, but she does. And I was like, I have this idea, but it's not like quite falling into place. And so she kind of turned around and she said like 3 words, and I was like, that's it. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. Oh my God. And like 2 hours later, I had sketched out like the entire thing and like everything I wanted. And sometimes you just have an idea that snaps into place. So there was kind of a blank there.
What do you do when you do get stuck on a plot point? Like you talk to friends, obviously, but and then how else do you get over writer's block?
I couldn't get over it without my friends. I have a really tight group of writer friends. Holly Black. Yeah. That's right. Kelly, Sarah Reese Brennan, also Maureen, my friend Robin Wasserman, and usually we work together pretty much every day. Some of us don't all live in the same place, but we communicate remotely. And so I think that for me, when I get stuck on something, I immediately kind of go to my critique group and I'm like, I'm stuck on this thing. Can we talk through it? And honestly, like the best thing, okay, you've all seen House, right? Yeah. So you get House, and he's got some guy who's got spraying blood out of his eyes, like a toad. And he's like, I got a guy who's spraying blood out of his eyes. Let's get all the doctors together, and they're going to come up with a whole bunch of different potential solutions. So they're like my doctors on House. I'm like, okay, everybody, let's get together. I have a problem. Everybody start coming up with random solutions. So we'll just start like talking and saying stuff and like throwing, Jace becomes a frog. That's right. Simon's a penguin. It's going to be amazing. It's like the movie Madagascar. Everyone's a penguin. And I'm like, okay, that maybe not that, And they're like, they're all in jail. It's a jail thing. And it's like Orange is the New Black. And we're just like throwing out potential possibilities, Jace designs a cat calendar. I'm like, could happen. There's actually, the cat calendar did make its way into Queen of Air and Darkness because of one of these things, so there is a cat calendar. I know, right? I love cat calendars. So, so we're all kind of like, they're coming up, we basically just brainstorm, and eventually one of those things either is the right idea or kickstarts the right idea.
And some of those ideas can be pretty jarring when you read on the page and you're just like, oh my God, why did she do that? Like, I need to go online, I need to tweet at her, I need to Instagram, like, give me answers now.
Blame Molly.
Were you always planning on killing Livia? Is that a spoiler? I know it happens.
It's not a spoiler, it's been a year and a half.
Now they're going to tweet at me. They're going to be like, oh my God, how dare you.
What?
I will still read it.
Okay, but
You
now
see,
you know
you have to see the story.
At the end of Lord of Shadows.
By then, I will forget.
That's right. That's true. It's a really long book, so you'll forget. Yes, I was, okay, so you might want to stick your fingers in your ears, I guess, if you don't know about this development. But yes, I was always planning on killing Livy at the end of Lord of Shadows. Yes, she was created to die. I didn't know this would be so controversial.
I am open to creative worms.
the books are sort of, okay, the way the characters are created, the most important thing in the world to Julian and also to Emma is family. And the most important thing to Julian in the world is taking care of his brothers and sisters. The thing he is the most scared of is something happening to one of them. When you create a character that has a greatest fear, you have to make that greatest fear happen. It's like Chekhov's gun, you know, there's a gun on the mantelpiece at the beginning of a play, it's going to have to go off by the end of the play. So it's like a rule of drama. So I was like, well, okay, Julian, this is his greatest fear, this is the thing he's most afraid of. So, and it kind of is the thing that almost the whole family is the most afraid of because they've lost so much already. And they're not prepared to lose, really, they're not prepared to lose somebody else. And so this huge loss is what propels kind of all of the action of Queen of Air and Darkness. And I think it's the book that, of all of my books, is the most about grief and grieving and making meaning out of death and loss. That doesn't mean there isn't any funny stuff. There's a cat calendar. And Kieran gets really obsessed with the cat calendar, but they don't have them in Fairy. And he's like, oh my God, there's a cat every month. And then in December, there's 2 cats. Mine is blown. Anyway, so like I'm saying, you know, there's some more lighthearted stuff, but like I feel like these characters have to process what happened, and it is in that processing of this thing that has sort of appended their lives that all of their lives are changed. And we write books to write about how people change. You know, a character who stays static isn't interesting, and you always ask yourself the question. It's one of like the first questions I think that we ask as writers when we sit down to write a book. It's why now? Why do I join this character now? I've made up a character, but why am I joining them on this particular moment, on this day, in their life? What's changed? How are they going to change? Why am I writing about today and not some other day? So I think for me, that death was the why now.
And then speaking of fairies, actually, each of your series kind of focuses and hones in on a different magical group. So what was it like to, focus in on the fairy world this time around?
Oh my God, yeah, no, it's true. It's sort of like TMI kind of covers like vampires and warlocks more closely, and like not so much fairies because I've always been a little bit scared of writing about fairies. There's so much mythology about fairies. People take it very seriously. Like it's part of, the fairy mythology is part of many cultures, and it's a very significant folklore. And fairies are very formal, and they also have that thing where they don't lie, which makes them really irritating to write. Because they can't even, does these jeans make me look weird? They can't be like, no. They have to be like, and you're like, it's really difficult to write characters who can't prevaricate or flatter or, who mislead in very complex ways. When they say something that is misleading, it has to be very carefully worded. So you're always with fairies working with very careful use of language. And so I was always like, Holly's been writing fairies for years, and I've been there helping her with the fairy books and working on the fairy books, and just the way she helps me, we work on each other's books, and I was always like, these fairies drive me bananas. Why can't they just say what they mean? And I was always making fun of her, like, I'm like, they can't just be like, oh man, I'm so tired. They have to be like, oh, I die upon the green sward, oh, not to go, and she was like, it's not funny. And so finally I was like, well, the really terrible thing has happened to me. I've had this idea for a whole series, but it's about fairies. I mean, it's like primarily they are the main downworlders in this series because of the cold piece and because Mark and Helen, the Blackthorn kids, are half fairy. And just a lot of the action also takes place in fairies, how the story developed. And she was like, I think she actually dedicated Cruel Prince to me, and she was like, this is for Cassie, who has finally had to write about fairies, ha ha ha. Like, look in there, it's like on the front page. So she obviously got a lot of joy out of that. But actually, once I got into the writing about fairies and the sort of creation of spinning off what I knew about my fairy world into a bigger world and actually getting to go to fairy and see what it was like, because we never had done that before. We had visited the court of the Seelie Queen, but we'd never really gone past that into the actual world of fairy. I got really into it, and I started to really love it, and being able to, and reading all the fairy mythology was really rewarding and fun, and I got to kind of play off that in a number of different scenes, and eventually I got to a place where I actually really love writing about fairies.
My last question for you before we open it up to a fan Q&A is, how has the success, wow, I can speak, the success of the series impacted your storytelling? Like, do you ever feel pressured to change a storyline, especially, well, like, now you're going to go back and, like, rewrite the entire situation because of the response, but do you ever feel pressure to change a storyline because of, what people, want to see happen?
I mean, not really. I'm a very stubborn person, but also, I feel like writers write best when they write the story they want to tell. And even though, sometimes it's all the time I see people saying, oh, I wish this would happen, or I wish this character would be focused on more. I'm like, well, but that's not the story I want to tell. That's not my story. It's what my friend Libba Bray calls, why is this cat my cat and not some other cat? It's got to be my cat. So it has to be the story that I want to tell and that I'm enthusiastic about. I can't force myself to be enthusiastic about a story that I don't care about. So I try to hone in on, the things that make me excited and fulfilled as a writer. And also, I feel like one of the things that's both, a little scary but also rewarding about social media and being, interactive with your fans is that you see all their opinions, which is good because you see all their opinions, but it's also bad because you see all their opinions. But none of them agree with each other anyway. And so I'm like, well, it's impossible for me to change a story to please people, because if I change it to please these people, then these people will be unhappy. Right? So I'm like, there's no, people want different things, and that's normal. As readers, we connect to different pieces of a story. And that is actually the way it should be, because hopefully a story offers us enough different pieces that different people can connect in different ways. So it's always going to be normal for people to connect more strongly with different sections of a story. There's always going to be the person who reads Harry Potter and is like, why is this not the story of Professor McGonagall? That is all I ever wanted. And you're like, all right. Okay, that's what you connected with. That's totally fine. But, the author still has to write the story that they're connected to. And so I think that, the fact that there's no one agreement about how the story should go anyway means there's no real way for me to change the story in order to please people, because people aren't a monolith. They don't all have the same opinion. So since there's no pleasing everybody, I might as well just do what I think is the best thing for the story.
Has there ever been a time that you saw something and you're like, oh, that was a good idea, I wish I thought of that?
I'm trying to think. I'm sure that I totally have. Definitely seen people be like, I'm trying to remember. I think at some point, there was a really great theory about church at one point where they were like, I think it was in the Infernal Devices. Church, the cat. They were like, so church turns out to be like an angel and saves everybody. And I was like, that would kind of have been awesome. They were like, church, he becomes 75 feet tall. He destroys the universe. And I was like, I really missed out on being able to write a 75-foot tall cat who's like, so, you can't think of everything.
All right, perfect. Well, this is a perfect time. I believe Maureen is going to help us.
When we had the conversations of things that would be good to put in as a consignment for a puffy shirt and leather pants, and you said yes?
I did, and I put in, I didn't make Simon wear a puffy shirt and leather pants. Oh, I did. I wrote in a section where he wore a puffy shirt and leather pants, right? Yeah. It's in Beverly Fire. He totally wears a puffy shirt and leather pants. He's really mad about it.
I just want to say you're welcome, everybody.
Hi. So I really love Julian, and I was wondering if he's a protagonist, but he has a very questionable set of morals, and he really kind of leans on that line between right and wrong, depending on how it is for his family. So I was wondering if that makes him more difficult to write while you're still trying to keep him a protagonist and a main character in a story.
I think that's a really good observation. Julian is definitely wobbles on the line between hero and anti-hero, right? He is so focused on keeping his family safe that he pretty much will do anything. And the question is, how much anything will he do, right? How far will he go? What choices is he willing to make? How bad might those choices be? And he's certainly being put in a position with the Parabatai curse where he might wind up with a lot of power and be able to do some things that are really bad. I think it makes him a difficult protagonist to write, but also a really fun protagonist to write. I love characters that are sort of morally gray and that have a certain flexibility in their moral code that lets you be surprised by the decisions that they make. And I've even sometimes been surprised by the decisions that Julian has made. So I think, yeah, it makes him, he's an interestingly difficult protagonist to write, but also really rewarding.
Have Church and Chairman Meow ever met? And if not, will they?
As far as I know, they have never met, which is very sad. But it's totally possible they could meet. But I feel like I should save that for, like, you know, a major event or story. Like, this could totally happen in the future, right? Like, maybe there's a moment where Isabel needs to cat sit for both Church and Chairman Meow. And maybe they have some stuff to tell each other. I feel like a story from that point of view would be kind of awesome.
My friend asked me recently, like, why I like these books, because she hasn't read them. No.
Well, that's better.
She hasn't read them. I'm already digging a hole, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine.
And I was like, basically Cassie Clare, also they make fun of me for calling you Cassie, and I was like, no, it's a thing.
That's fine.
Yeah. So I was like, I was explaining, like, she created this empire of books, and it's so cool, and it inspired me to write, and also, like, there's this thing where she makes two characters hate ducks, and it's great. And I just wanted to know, and it's completely, like, stupid, what animals do the blackthorns hate?
Wait, so are we positing that, like, in this world, every family has an animal that they don't like?
Yes! Like, I'm scared of squirrels. Like, the ones on my campus are frightening.
See, I actually feel opposite. I like squirrels, and in fact, I started putting food out for the squirrels that live near my house because I was worried about them because of the winter. And then my friend came over, and the squirrels, apparently deranged with all the food that they had been eating, ate through the bumper of her car. And she was really mad at me, although I really feel like it's not my fault.
Is she a blackthorn?
I mean, I actually think the blackthorns are okay with squirrels, and I really feel like Ty mostly likes every animal, but I think the blackthorns dislike possums. I think they're anti-possum.
I'm gonna go to the back. Also, Cassie, just an idea. Chairman Meow and Church in the month of December calendar.
Oh yeah, the cat calendar.
I'm just gonna go to the back, and then I'll run back.
I'll ask
to the
Cassandra
front. Back question.
Cats of the Shadowhunter universe.
How about, did you have a question? Who has a question? You have a question. Here we go.
Hello. I was just curious, what was it like in this series for the first time, writing the point of view from someone who is already in Shadowhunter culture as compared to the Infernal Devices and Moral Instruments?
It was really different. I mean, it's an interesting question because I was like, I can't do it again. Like, I can't have another character who doesn't know about the Shadowhunter world be introduced to the Shadowhunter world because I can't keep doing that to my readers. You know, they already know the Shadowhunter world, and I can't keep reintroducing them to it. So it was really interesting writing from the point of view of people who are already Shadowhunters and yet trying to make the book comprehensible to new readers. I had to think of it as sort of like a high fantasy, you know, like as if you were writing Game of Thrones, and you're like, okay, we're in this world, it's not a secret world, this is the world that these people have grown up in, this is their normal. You know, Westeros is their normal, and in this case, being a Shadowhunter is their normal. And so this is the only world they know. I did use Kit a little bit as an intro character to kind of like give a little bit more perspective from the outside on Shadowhunters. And then I also, so what I did was I ran the book to critique people who had never read another Shadowhunter book. And I was like, give me a list of questions that you have about the Shadowhunter world and things you don't understand when you're done. And so they did that, and it was actually kind of surprising what they didn't understand. And I was like, okay, look, this is the stuff that I need to fill in and kind of explain more and make people understand that, you know, that I take for granted. So that was really interesting.
I wanted to ask a question about Ty because I love him so much.
Aww.
How did you get the idea about Ty?
Ty is based on my stepbrother, who is autistic. He has Asperger's, and he is when I met him, he was 10. He's now a grown-up, and he's a vet. But he loves animals, and he's just a super interesting person, and I kind of thought, you know, and he has read all the Shadowhunter books. He's a major reader. And so we were talking about them at some point, and he was like, what about an autistic Shadowhunter? And I was like, yeah, that would actually be really cool. I was like, what if that Shadowhunter was like you? And he was like, yeah. That would be great. So he's, so Ty is basically kind of based on my stepbrother, and what it would be like if he was a Shadowhunter.
Cassie.
Hello.
It's really intimidating talking to you directly. My name is David. I came from Colombia just to see you.
Oh my God! Why would you do that?
And oh my God, my flesh. Sorry.
Well, I'm glad you came. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And I was wondering if you are planning to tour South America with this new book, because we have a lot of shadow hunters in South America. That we have all your translated books. We have all your books in Spanish. So we really love to have you there. I mean, I could be here, but from other so, do you have any plan? I mean, or would you like to?
I would love to, actually. And I'm trying to think. I got invited to go to Bogota this year, but I couldn't go. So I was actually thinking that I would write back to the festival and see if they would bring me next year. So maybe, because basically, if you're going to tour in another country, your publisher there has to bring you. You can't just show up and be like, I'm in Peru, I'm going to sign, bring me books. Because you don't know where you are, and it doesn't, it doesn't really work. But I know my Colombian publisher, and they're great, and they did invite me before, so maybe they will, so I will write to them and see if they will invite me again. Okay. And then I hope you will come and see me in Bogota.
Of course I will, thank you.
So I started reading your books, I think, near the end of middle school, beginning of high school, and I loved it completely. And as a writer, you really inspired me whenever I'm writing my own pieces, especially fantasy pieces, because it's awesome. I don't really know how else to say that. It's just really awesome. And one of the struggles I have as a writer sometimes is that I sometimes will look at my story and then I will have no motivation. Like, I literally don't know what to write next. Like, I look at it and just like blank slate. So I guess my question is, have you ever faced that, and if you have, like, how do you get past that sometimes?
Well, I mean, yes, I think we all have that, oh God, I don't want to go on feeling.
Every single day.
Yeah.
Literally every single day I sit there and I'm like, I'm gonna go get coffee now. Bye.
Done with life. I walk into the sea. I start a new life under the sea with my friends, SpongeBob. Yeah, no, I mean, we all experience that lack of motivation, and it often comes with the feeling that you want to start something different. Don't do that. What you will wind up with is 16 things that you have started, and you have not finished any of them. And well, I mean, I'm helped along now in my life by having deadlines and terror of my editor. So, I have to finish things or she'll come and kill me. But I also, I mean, it is, oh man, it is one of the hardest parts of writing, just to keep going. And one of the things I think that can help is to set yourself a word count. And just be like, I'm going to write 500 words every day on this story. And 500 words is not that much. It really isn't, and so you can sort of feel like, I can do that. It's a manageable goal. I'm just going to do that. And you will eventually have a story. And once you have finished a story, you will be like, I finished a story, so I know I can finish it, and the next one will be incrementally easier to do. I will say that having, written several books, you get to a place where you're like, I finished before, I will finish again, even if it feels impossible right now. So I think set yourself small goals that you can achieve that will get you to have finished. And then once you have finished a couple of times, you will feel more like this is something I can actually do. And for me, like when I've worked with like lots of people who want to be writers, and the one thing that I have noticed that makes a difference in terms of who becomes a published writer is they finish. That's it.
Hi. Hi, Cassandra.
Hello.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for writing such an amazing series of books where there are subversions of love triangles and twists upon twists, and then characters in the queer community who, like at the time, no one was writing about in fantasy series. So thank you. My question is, I am writing a story involving vampires, werewolves, fairies, witches, and that's hard enough trying to make up something original for your characters. But that's my problem. All I have is characters, I don't know what to put them in a plot. So what's your advice for me on that? I write scenes with them, but I don't know how they all connect.
Okay, so what you're basically doing is kind of character work. You're putting your characters in scenes and the characters are kind of talking to each other, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, what you're doing is working out how these characters relate to each other. So it's not a totally, you're not wasting your time. A lot of times we do that as sort of an exercise to just try to figure out how do these characters talk to each other? Who are they? How do they relate to each other? What's their relationships? But, you will eventually run out of, scenes to write with the characters. I remember Holly telling me once that initially Tithe was just a lot of elves sitting around like drinking coffee and experiencing ennui. And I was like, yeah, that kind of happens to all of us in the initial part where we're figuring out what's this world, how does it work, who are these people, how do they relate to each other. So I would say you want to ask yourself maybe like 3 big questions. I would ask yourself the why now. Why am I joining these characters now? What has changed? What has changes for these characters right at this minute when this story starts? Because something changes. Every story starts with something changing. And I would say ask yourself at the end, what does each character want? What do they want more than anything? That's your want line. And you're gonna think about that with everything that you do. And does this, advance what my character wants? How is what my character wants driving this story? Because it is the desires of the character that push all stories forward. And then I would say that the third thing that you want to ask yourself is my character going to get what they want? Are my characters going to get what they want, or are they not going to get what they want? Is this a heroic drama, or is this a tragedy? So those are the 3 questions I would ask yourself to kind of get yourself into a place where you are moving forward. And if you know what your character wants more than anything, your character will push you forward through the story.
Thank you so much.
Good luck! Your book sounds awesome. I like all those things, Squirrels, fairies, all the
This is like an exciting maze. Here we go.
Don't forget the people up front.
Hi,
They're giving me accusing looks.
First of all, I would like to thank Maureen for always looking out for us Simon lovers. I like sleeping on him, but Maureen never is. But that's not what I have to say. So, okay. I'm so sorry. Out of all of the Blackthorns, or just like TV characters if not Blackthorn, do you think has changed the most since you first conceived of them when you first started writing them? Who surprised you the most?
Oh man. All the characters who changed the most. Kieran, probably. Kieran kind of started out as an incidental villain. He was just a jerk. And then I was like, as I was writing the book, I was like, no, that's not that. It's not as interesting to me, I was saying before, I like characters that are more gray. He does a kind of a jerk thing in Lady Midnight, and it has some really bad consequences. And so after I sort of created that story, I thought, well, okay, but actually the story of how does he kind of come back from making that real bad decision that he made, and how does he come back from the consequences of that decision that he made, and how does that relationship advance, etc., is more interesting to me than just an incidental villain that we don't see again. And so I rewrote Lady Midnight with that in mind, that we were going to see Kieran again, and that he was going to develop into a bigger character. And so I think his whole arc has definitely changed the most.
All right, we have time for one more from the speaker, and then an exciting thing happens.
Okay, first of all, I want to say that Brazil really wants you to go there.
Hi, Brazil!
So my new master is saying, please ask Cassie to come to the next year BookCon. Okay, my question is, I'm really obsessed about TBA and Julian and Emma, but
okay,
I also really like The Last Hours.
Yay.
So, can you tell us anything about James and Matthew? Yes! And Lucy and Cordelia. These are my 4 favorite characters until now, so I really need to know something about them.
I think it's great that you guys are excited about The Last Hours. That is awesome. Do you all know what The Last Hours are? Yes! Alright, I'm happy about that. So, Last Hours, what can I tell you about James and Matthew and Lucy and Cordelia? I'm writing Chain of Gold right now. I'm having a ton of fun with it. James and Matthew are Parabatai, and though I've been working on kind of how does their relationship work and how is it similar to but different from Will and Jem. I would say that really the thing that strikes me about the characters in The Last Hours that's really different from Infernal Devices is that I went into it knowing these characters come from happy families. Like, we know their parents. Their parents aren't evil people. They haven't done horrible things to their kids, and they're not all dead. So how do I create drama for these people? Because, we still have to have conflict and we still have to have issues and problems, otherwise there's no story. But at the same time, it's not like, I can write this, about how terrible their parents are, because they're not. So I think that one of the really interesting things for me has been writing about characters who basically grew up happy. Like, they grew up happy and secure, they were loved by their parents, they actually live in a time of relative peace. There's kind of not that many demons. They're basically living pretty normal lives, and suddenly this thing comes crashing into their lives like a meteor and blows up everything. And, well, I mean, okay, I could tell you, but I don't know if you want to be spoiled. Into their lives, blows up everything like a meteor, and how, when you have grown up, I mean, early in the book, there's a scene with Will and Tessa, and they do get down. But they're married. It's okay. But they're talking, and Will is like, I actually worry about our kids because they have grown up with so much peace. And they have grown up with so much, with an idyllic life. How will they deal with conflict if it ever comes their way? And so that's kind of actually what the story is about a little bit, is like this big thing comes crashing into their lives, blows everything up, and how do these people who have grown up without much conflict or danger, unlike most of the other protagonists we've read about in the Shadowhunter world, deal with this thing. And so I think for me that's been the really big, different thing about The Last Hours and these characters. You're welcome.
Super great about updating you guys as I've been listening to Queen of Air and Darkness, but I am just getting into part 2 of the book, so I thought I would hop on here. Fair warning, this is going to be spoilery. I mean, it's really good. It's kind of crazy what's happening. It is interesting, and you heard her say that this was going to be a book that's about grief, and you really see that happening with Julian shutting off his emotions with the spell and everything. Part 2 is interesting. It's not going a direction I had expected. I can't remember what it's called, but like the alternate world they go into where Sebastian Morgenstern won. It's an interesting concept. I can't decide how I feel about it. I sort of wish there was some explanation of why it exists as an alternate reality, just because I don't think we've gotten that in this world before, but it is an interesting idea to see kind of the different ways things could go wrong. The other thing I'm wondering about at this point is, I know with Ty's plan to try to bring Livy back from the dead, I'm wondering if it's going to be the Livy from this alternate dimension now that who's like a freedom fighter that they would bring back, because that would be kind of an interesting way to do it. So we'll see. But yeah, so I'm liking it. It's going well. I will update you guys a little bit more later. Like I said, I'm not great at the sort of legit reading vlogs, but I'll try to do my best. Okay, so I'm super confused because there was just this whole thing of Annabelle Blackthorne being in the office with Horace, but I thought she died in Thule, that Julian killed her. So what? I'm super confused. Like, what is going on? Are there 2 of them? Did they make a copy? Like, what the hell? So I'm really curious to see how this all wraps up. I've got like 11 hours left at this point, so I don't know. We'll see how much more progress I make today. Can I just say, Zara is such a good villain. Like, you really hate her. She is awful. Really, really well written. So I'm like, kind of hope she doesn't survive the book. I guess we'll see. So Faye just told them he had lied and would not help them with the spell. And I am relieved. I was like kind of worried about what was going to happen if that actually went through. So hopefully that's the end of it, but I'm not positive. Okay, so I just finished part 2. Part 3 is getting ready to start. Annabelle Blackthorn is apparently a shapeshifter, so that's interesting. And I'm really curious to see what's going to happen. So they've got the fake meeting and then the real meeting. I don't know what the real plan is. They're starting a war. Like, super interested to see how this all wraps up. Yep, they're still totally going to try to raise Libby. I knew it was too simple for that to just be the end of it. Crap. I'm like super worried about everybody. And what is Drew doing? Oh shoot, guys. I think Emma is gonna break the Parabatai rune. I don't know why I didn't see that coming, but I didn't. So, and also, like, why is it that nobody can ever do what they're supposed to do and always make trouble for everybody else? I mean, I guess that's how these things go, right? Well, after all that, she didn't end up breaking the Parabatai rune. Like, I'm slightly disappointed, but I guess, like, it would be a problem maybe to not have Parabatai in this world anymore, maybe. But what are they gonna do? Like, really? Faith? I mean, that's great, but, like, I don't know. Also, for people with the infernal devices who were wishing that the whole love triangle had just turned into, like, a polyamorous thing, I guess you're getting something similar in this book. I know some people were very excited about it. I mean, I think it's fine. In some ways, politically, I think it's a really bad idea with Kieran potentially being the next fairy king, but I don't know. I guess they'll probably work it out. Guys, Cassie writes such good battle scenes, in my opinion. I like it because it switches perspective and you get the close perspective of what individual people are going through, and you can kind of put it together to get a sense of what's happening rather than doing these kind of dull, dry, big picture scenarios of battles. It is my preference in battle scenes, and so I like that that's how she's doing it. So I'm in, like, the big battle near the end, maybe? I don't know. I think I've got, like, 4 hours left in the audiobook right now, so I'll keep listening. Oh, holy shit, guys. So I was right. I was like, what the hell? I thought he killed Annabelle. So no, apparently she can't be killed that easily. And also, dang Zara, like, oh, Emma doesn't kill her when she had the chance and then she stabs her in the back. Like, oh my god, this girl, Zara. Ah, she's the worst, like, the worst villain. Okay, so I gotta see what happens next. Guys, oh my god, this is, like, crazy. This book, it's killing me. Okay, I just need to, like, finish it, but, like, okay, why was an Eidolon demon pretending to be Annabelle, and what the hell is going on with the Parabatai bond with... Okay, I gotta listen. Guys, this book is crazy. Oh my gosh, they turned into giant Nephilim. Like, what the hell? It's like so brutal too. They're just like, oh my gosh, like, how is this gonna get resolved? It's like, oh, and Horace got, like, killed real easily. What's gonna happen is, oh my gosh. So crazy. So that's what happens apparently when Parabatai fall in love. They turn into giant monstrous Nephilim. Are we gonna get an explanation of why that's true and what it is about the rune? That's what I'm super curious about. Oh my gosh, guys, like, all the feels, like, the family slowly talking them down with, like, all of their love. Like, oh, it's so sweet. Unrealistic probably, but, like, so sweet. I love their family. It's just, oh my gosh, I hope they're okay. I mean, they're probably gonna be okay. And then I wonder what's next. Like, are they gonna continue to have this problem being Parabatai in love with each other, or you know, does this fix the problem? I don't know. I want to know. Oh my gosh, guys, it's so emotional. Okay, I'm gonna keep listening. Okay, so now I'm wondering, because I was right about the whole political thing, and I'm glad they figured that out. So, like, Kieran's supposed to go back to Fairy and be the king, and, like, that's that. Can't have human consorts. But there's this whole thing with Kit being a descendant of the first heir. So does that make him eligible to be the king of Fairy? Like, is that where this is gonna go? I don't know. We'll see. Guys, this book is so crazy. I can't believe it. So the cohort protested and they're all just leaving Alicante. They're gonna, like, lock themselves into Alicante. That's, like, a really tragic ending for them. But I guess an apt one. It's so nuts. And Alec is the consul. That's exciting. That's cool to see Alec get to be the next consul, and I'm hopeful that by the end of the book, maybe we'll get to see a wedding with him and Magnus Bane, because, you know, been waiting for that for a long time. That would be great. Okay, so I just finished. Wow. Okay, so number one, I love, yes, Alec and Magnus finally got married. That was great. It was a little bit long, like that whole scene with everybody, but it was fun. It was cute. And then that ending, guys, with the evil Jace from the other world, like, oh shoot, okay. I guess we get like a mini cliffhanger setting us up for the next series. But yeah, overall I liked it. I gotta like sit on what the rating is gonna be, somewhere between a 4 and a 5. I don't know, but it was really good. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I am now going to add this to my footage and get this video up as soon as I can, but talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts if you guys read this, if you liked it, what you thought about some of the twists and turns. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good night.